Hi, I'm Liz Ellis, Executive Director of the Indianapolis Propoleum. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening for our Marilyn K. Glick Women's Enrichment Series. We appreciate your attendance. A couple of housekeeping points. If you could please mute your microphones during the program, that would be great. Also, for optimal viewing, click the speaker view button up in the top right-hand corner and type your questions for Alelia, Judith, and Teresa in the chat feature. That would be great. The Indianapolis Propoleum is a nonprofit organization dedicated to women's leadership, arts and culture, and historic preservation. Our programs include not only the Women's Enrichment Series, but also our Mayrite Sewell Leadership Award, as well as programming that highlights Indiana authors and musical performances like our Porch Concert Series, featuring classical and jazz music. The Marilyn K. Glick Women's Enrichment Series was established to connect the community with inspiring first-person stories of accomplished women. The speakers have contributed, I've lost my place. The speakers, have contributed to the social, cultural, educational, and professional fabric of Indiana and beyond. We'd like to say that these incredible women have broken the mold. I would like to thank our sponsors. First of all, Mary Ann Glick, who has very graciously named the series in honor of her mother, Marilyn. Dr. and Mrs. Kenneth Rankins, Beetle Financial, Barnes and Thornburg, Dawn Bennett, Peg Kennedy with FC Tucker Company, Bose McKinney and Evans, and the National Bank of Indianapolis. I'd also like to thank our VIP ticket holders and the many women who participated to honor a significant woman whose existence impacted their story. Finally, thank you to our Women's Enrichment Series committee, who's worked tirelessly to make this program a continued success. In just a moment, we'll introduce our featured speakers, Alelia Bundles and Judith Thomas. But first, our program tonight will be a little different from our Women's Enrichment Series programs in the past. We're going to start our program with an original work by Teresa Reynolds, the great-granddaughter of Violet Reynolds, secretary to Madam C.J. Walker. Teresa is an Indianapolis-based artist, singer, actor, organizer, and activist. After receiving her bachelor's degree in theater at Ball State University, Teresa moved to New York City, where she spent more than 14 years in the arts scene. She traveled the world singing backup for Gloria Gaynor of I Will Survive fame, acted in off-Broadway theater productions, and successfully produced theater, a TV pilot, and a sketch comedy. In 2018, Teresa moved back to Indianapolis to join the thriving local arts community. She has since been featured in 2021's Virtual Art and Soul musical celebration, enjoyed a sold-out main room for her feature debut at the Jazz Kitchen, and twice been featured artist for both Swish Indie and Arts for Lawrence at Fort Benjamin Harrison. Teresa has also performed at Concerts on the Canal and the Mousetrap with Rob Dixon, and has been a featured artist at the Jazz Kitchen with Blackberry Jam and Mina Kiohone. She's a vocalist and interpreter at the Indiana Historical Society. Ladies and gentlemen, Teresa Reynolds.
Growing up, jazz was the soundtrack to my childhood. My father always had some jazz records spinning, so this song is dedicated to the music of Indiana Avenue. This song is called The Flame.
Thank you so much. We're going to put the entire band, the names in the chat feature over there. I forgot to mention those, and I do apologize. Now I would like to introduce our speakers for the evening, Alelia Bundles and Judith Thomas. Alelia Bundles is the author of On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker, a New York Times notable book about her entrepreneurial great-great-grandmother that was the inspiration for Self-Made, a fictional 4-part Netflix series starring Octavia Spencer. She's at work on her 5th book, The Joy Goddess of Harlem, Alelia Walker and Her Harlem Renaissance, a biography of her great-grandmother, whose parties and arts patronage helped define that era. Ms. Bundles is a Vice Chair Emerita of Columbia University's Board of Trustees and immediate past chair of the board of the National Archives Foundation. She's also a board member of the March on Washington Film Festival and on the advisory boards of the Schlesinger Library on the History of Women at Harvard's Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, the Smithsonian's National Women's History Initiative, and the Indiana Historical Society Publications Committee. She founded the Madam Walker Family Archives and is the brand historian for Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culture, a line of hair care products inspired by her great-great-grandmother and manufactured by Sundial Brands. Ms. Bundles was a network television executive and producer for 30 years at NBC News and then at ABC News, where she was Washington, D.C. Deputy Bureau Chief and Director of Talent Development. Her articles and essays have been published in the New York Times Book Review, Parade, Ms., O Magazine, Essence, several encyclopedias and books, and on her blog at www.aleliabundles.com. As a speaker and MC, she's appeared at universities, corporations, and book festivals, as well as on ABC, CBS, MSNBC, NBC, NPR, PBS, and BBC. She's served as an advisor for numerous documentaries, biographies, scholarly papers, and history texts. As a recipient of an Emmy and a DuPont Gold Baton, she's participated in writing residencies at Yaddo and the McDowell Colony. In 2021, she was named to the Forbes 50 over 50 impact list. She graduated magna cum laude from Harvard University and received a master's degree from the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. She's a member of Phi Beta Kappa and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She grew up in Indianapolis and now lives in Washington, D.C. Deputy Mayor Judith Thomas was appointed by Mayor Hogsett as the Deputy Mayor of Neighborhood Engagement in January of 2021. Before coming to work for the city, Deputy Mayor Judith Thomas ran Judith & Co., a consulting firm focused celebrating the rich diversity of arts and culture and tourism. Deputy Mayor Thomas is a community scholar of Africana Studies at IUPUI. She previously served as president of the Madam Walker Legacy Center, and she has over 30 years of work experience in Indianapolis, including roles with Visit Indy, the National Federation of State High School Associations, Emmis Communications, and the Indiana Convention Center. Thomas currently sits on the board of advisors for the Idle Museum, and the boards of directors for the Indiana Destination Development Corporation Foundation and the Cabaret. Born in Gary, Indiana, she attended North Central High School in Indianapolis and graduated from Butler University in 1990 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Public and Corporate Communications. Ladies and gentlemen, Alelia Bundles and Judith Thomas.
Judith, it's so good to be with you. Thank you so much, Liz. You did the long version of my bio, so thank you. So we're just so glad to be here. Judith, I'm going to do my little slide presentation, but do you have some greetings you want to bring first?
No, just excited to be here. I always love, getting with Alelia, of course, to talk about anything, but specifically this subject, the Walker, Madam CJ Walker herself, and Indiana Avenue, the past, the present, and the future. So it's going to be a great night.
All right, so I'm going to do the screen share, and then fingers crossed that everything goes right. Just give me, it may take me a few seconds. Let me get this up and get the right thing, slideshow going. Okay, so here we are. So I'm going to do my slides, and so I'm going to try to do like 5 to 6 minutes, but I have probably 20 minutes worth of stuff. But Judith and I just wanted to give you a sense of the history of Indiana Avenue. We know that people drive on 65, they go past it, they may come off at 10th Street and they go right downtown and may not know the history of the area. And I am old enough to have remembered it when it was still Indiana Avenue, but it's changed a lot. So if you're younger than 50, there's a lot you probably don't know. So we're going to give you the quick history lesson. So Madam C.J. Walker, my great-great-grandmother, came to Indianapolis in 1910 when Indiana Avenue was the center of Black life. Here she is in her Model T on Indiana Avenue. And when she moved there, she bought this house on the left, which was at 640 Northwest Street, now Martin Luther King, and built a factory right behind it. And these are her employees. And I know in Indianapolis, I don't have to say who Madam Walker is, but obviously she was a woman who was born on a plantation in Louisiana in 1867. By the time she had died in 1919, she was a millionaire who employed thousands of women who were selling her hair care products. She was a political activist, a philanthropist, and a patron of the arts. She was very much involved in the community. She contributed $1,000 to the building fund of the YMCA, the Black YMCA on Senate Avenue. Here she is with Booker T. Washington, her attorney, F.B. Ransom, who is behind her, and other leaders of Indianapolis. But when she arrived in Indianapolis, this is what Indiana Avenue looked like. You can see the thriving businesses that were there. And then she began to acquire property where Indiana Avenue, at the point where the Walker building is now, she began to acquire property during the teens because she wanted to build a building. This building, which we all know as the Madam Walker Legacy Center, was not completed until after her death, but this was what she envisioned. And you can see the new theater, reputedly finest in the world for colored folk to have performances on Monday. So it opened in December of 1927. And this is what it looked like when I was a little girl in the 1950s. This is actually a photo that my father, Henry Bundles, who was the founding president of Center for Leadership Development, took during the 60s. And here is my mom and Teresa's grandmother, Violet Reynolds, who's seated in the center, and the bookkeeper, Marie Overstreet. But this was in the office when I visited my mother in the office on the 4th floor of the Madam Walker Legacy Center. And when I would visit her, we would go back to the factory where the ladies were hand packing the Walker products. The Walker drugstore was downstairs at the Point. And then this was the outside of the building, actually a little bit earlier, probably in the 1930s or 40s. But when I was growing up, we lived on Grandview Drive, just north of Kessler, and we would drive down Northwestern Avenue, now MLK, to my mother's office. And now many people don't know what Northwestern Avenue is, but because people pass it on I-65. But I just urge you to go through that, to take that ride and see the Black neighborhood that used to be there. Because what we're talking about today is business and entrepreneurship. Because what I remember and what Judith remembers is C. Ferguson's bowling alley. I just saw C. Ferguson's granddaughter, Valerie Ballot, a couple of weeks ago, and we remembered going to the bowling alley and playing on the jukebox. Baird's Cleaners, Mr. Baird lived across the street from us when we were on Rookwood, but Black businesses that were thriving on Indiana Avenue and on what's now MLK. Barbecue Heaven, founded by Forrest Jones, now run by his son, Ron. George's Bar, well, I was too young to go to the bars, so I wasn't going to the bars, but that was, Indiana Avenue was known for the scene and the Sunset Terrace, the Sunset Cafe. On Northwestern, before I-65 was created, there was a thriving Black neighborhood as well. My church, Witherspoon Presbyterian, was on Paris Street. And this is what Paris Street looks like now. A Black neighborhood was destroyed, was erased. It was really a working class, middle class Black neighborhood, but because of redlining, these neighborhoods were disinvested. They were not, people were not able to get loans. And so then they were erased. And this happened because in 1958, as was happening in many cities around the United States, the highway system was being built. And often the highways were built over what had been formerly Black neighborhoods. And you can see this was the vision of the leadership of Indianapolis. And there are no Black people in these pictures. I would just ask you to note, this was what in the vision of what Indianapolis would be. And it was really destroying poor white neighborhoods and Black neighborhoods. You can see this, you've heard the term redlining. You see the parts of the city that are colored red. Those were Black neighborhoods. And all it took was for a few Black people to be in those neighborhoods for the federal government and the banking system to say, these are less desirable neighborhoods. And it was really, even though many of them were middle class and working class neighborhoods, but that was the mindset. And this is another example. You can see the highways, where the highways go, they are very much 65 and 70 are very much on the red areas, which were predominantly Black neighborhoods. This is IUPUI. This was the master plan that linked with the plans for the highway. And while IUPUI has done some great things in the community and is doing a lot of reparative work, it just is very important to understand this was happening not just in Indianapolis, but in many cities around the country. You can see this is what the neighborhood that used to be Black homes in Indianapolis. You can still see a few homes that are there. This is in the early 70s, the parking lot. They waited until people just sort of died off, but there were protests. 1937, you see lots of houses in what's now on Indiana Avenue, and the other side of Indiana Avenue is Ransom Place. You can see the houses being cleared out by 1979. By 1986, that neighborhood is almost entirely destroyed. And then this is more recently. A year and a half ago, many people may remember that there was a proposal to build a big, massive apartment building on Indiana Avenue between the Walker Building and the Urban League. People protested about that and did not want to have something like that. Black Lives Matter happened, George Floyd was murdered, and that protest grew into Reclaim Indiana Avenue. You can see what that neighborhood looks like now. On the left-hand side, you see the Urban League building. Then a little bit past that is the Madam Walker building. And on the right is the parking lot at Indiana IUPUI campus. But these were some ideas. Many people in the community, architects and planners, have begun to explore their reflections and their visions of what this neighborhood could look like if it honored the heritage and history of the area. And these are some design examples that were sketches by Ball State University professor Olin Dotson in collaboration with African-American architect Clay Dorsey, and illustrated by urban design student Jeffrey Tompkins. But they are imagining something that would reflect the history with music, with culture, just people being able, in the same way that I visited the Bottle Works. It was so exciting to see that in 16 Tech while I was in Indianapolis last week. And many of us hope that the same kind of thing could happen along Indiana Avenue. These are designs that were done in 2005. So people have been thinking about this for a long time, with green space, with walkable areas. And I just want to quote Justin Garrett Moore, who is an Indianapolis native, who said, and who's now at the Mellon Foundation doing incredible work on design and preservation. Cities are people. To quote Jane Jacobs, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. Another planner said, equity is where people aren't asked whether they want this bench is red or blue, but rather, is this project right or wrong? And last week when I was in Indianapolis, when I was at 16 Tech, Nashley actually happened to be there because she wanted to see the amazing work that was being done at 16 Tech. And she said, my goal is to turn this space into a self-sustaining village where people can live, work, play, and eat. It's up to us to build something for our hometown, something for the people coming behind us. And so that is, my just, Judith will know I'm so passionate about this. I just have so many great feelings about the history of the Avenue, and I love my hometown, and I know that we can make something great.
Yes, I will ditto that in every way. I mean, the possibilities really are endless, and it's all about really talking to people and communicating with people. I think the challenge with, as Alelia showed, the project that was proposed in 2019, or gosh, it's all kind of a blur, is that there wasn't a lot of conversation about it. And so when people saw it, they weren't happy because it kind of overtook the neighborhood and the area, and there wasn't conversation with that. So now I think that people are more open to listen, open to make this a collaborative effort for the future, to be able to say, hey, this is Indiana Avenue, this neighborhood, we celebrate the history and celebrate the future. So I think that that's where we're going. I think a lot of people are fascinated by the history. One thing that in 2020 that we realized after the two pandemics, as I like to say, not only COVID-19, but the racial uprising all across our country, is that people, their eyes were open, the veil of ignorance was lifted, and they want to know more about history. I remember when I would post on Facebook about the history of Black people, I was amazed at how many, Black people didn't know a lot of the history of other uprisings that happened for years. As a lot of people look at Tulsa, but then there was also the summer of 1919, and they were thirsty for it. And so therefore, they wanted to know more about what happened in Indiana, what happened in Indianapolis. And they go to Indiana Avenue. And that's why it's just great that people are wanting to know more and more. We have the wonderful Historical Society exhibit that will be up through April. And Alelia's been to Indianapolis multiple times talking about this. And I think that we also have people that are doing tours now. We've always had people doing tours and doing the work, celebrating the history in Indianapolis. But now we have a young man, Samson Livingston, that I remember during the pandemic going on one of his tours. It was in the summer, again, middle of the pandemic, about 30 people, and they were mostly white folks because they were curious. They wanted to know what happened on Indiana Avenue because they were hearing phrases like redlining and slum removal, and understanding what the highway system did to that neighborhood and many other neighborhoods across this country in other cities. And also Indiana University and Purdue University and the development of IUPUI and how it helped wipe out that neighborhood. So I think it's wonderful that people are wanting to know more, but they've also got to be behind it when we're ready to move forward. And I'm seeing someone say, it's sad that the Walker Theater neighborhood was broken up. However, did that help integrate the city as a whole? Wow, Alelia, that's a good question. Can you tell people why you lived on Grandview and what that was about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very complicated because Indianapolis was interesting, different from a lot of other cities because Black people lived all over the city. My dad grew up on the far south side of Indianapolis. The Indiana Avenue neighborhood was there. There was also a community on the near north side. When we first moved back to Indianapolis, we lived on just north of 38th Street on Rookwood. So Black people lived in many neighborhoods around the city. Still, there were covenants and there were neighborhoods where Black families could not live. But what began to happen, and this was really a federal policy and a banking policy, where if you lived, let's say on Paris and near Northwestern, if you had a nice house, Indianapolis is the city of homes, your neighborhood, you could not get a loan to make improvements on your house. The banks would not give Black families regular loans. Even Black men who were veterans of World War II could not get the VA loans. They were just, the banks just didn't do it. I mean, it sounds kind of incredible, but that was really the truth. And when my parents, because the neighborhood that we first lived in, you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't get a conventional loan. There was a suburban Black neighborhood that was created just north of Kessler in the Grandview area, on either side of Grandview, between 62nd and 64th initially. And my parents and many other families where the fathers were veterans of World War II and the Korean War couldn't get loans from banks. They got loans from a Black insurance company and built new homes. But it was because they couldn't improve the homes that were in what had been longtime Black neighborhoods. So yes, it was great that people were moving into other areas, but I think there was a real interruption of generational wealth creation from the families who were living along Northwestern, who were living in Indiana on Indiana Avenue, who were really pushed out of their homes by eminent domain and by these banking policies. If those families had been able to stay there, they would have been able to develop generational wealth. So, there are two sides to the coin.
And I think the book, The Color of Law, if you haven't read that, read that book. It will lay out what the federal government, some of those policies, and why we really took 80. We never even had a chance to take step forwards. We were always, Black people were always kind of several 100 feet behind, that's for sure. I think one thing I'd love to talk about when people say Indiana Avenue, when I first started getting involved and working at the Walker, and people talk about the jazz clubs, and that was amazing. It's incredible jazz artists that came out of internationally known jazz artists, but the businesses that were there and the families that had businesses. And what was exciting when I was at the Walker, a lot of the young people I would talk to, and they were excited about doing some innovative things. And then they'd go back home and they'd find out that they had an aunt or a grandmother or a grandfather that owned a business in that neighborhood, and they had no idea. It's almost like, people didn't want to talk about what happened because it hurt them. But yet you've got this family legacy that can really help build you up and let you know that you come from people that have created opportunity for themselves in a time when they shouldn't have had any. And that we kind of lost that too. But I think now young people are really seeking their history to understand who they come from, and also the type of city they came from, and what we have to offer now, and how we can build upon that history. And as I would do a lot of research just to understand more, like the Ferguson brothers that had businesses, and people that had restaurants and cleaners and coffee shops. I mean, think about it. We were a segregated society. We had to create our own way and our own services because we couldn't get serviced in white businesses. So I think that's we still kind of have that legacy where there are young people now wanting to kind of build on that, and they see the opportunities and the possibilities. Young women like Kelly Jones and Be Nimble, they're actually creating their Melon Kitchen at 16 Tech, where it is African-American chefs. But Kelly and Jeff Williams, her partner, get so deep into the business. Mind you, they have law degrees and MBAs, but they are planning so well because they have investigated and researched, and they see that takeout and delivery with food is big and is $1 billion business. And how can some of these chefs that maybe wouldn't have an opportunity, how can they develop their business and take it to another level? I mean, it is definitely the spirit of Madam Walker and Indiana Avenue. And Alelia, I'll say again, the story that I wish the Netflix series would have told more and touched more on is that business side of Madam, that she was a Black woman 100 years ago in a place where, in a country where women couldn't heck, women couldn't wear pants, let alone travel the country and do business and become a brand manager and put yourself on a product and get other women empowered and get them out all across the country and around the world to be empowered and take care of themselves. I mean, that is just 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Well, and you mentioned Kelly Jones, and one of the things that is so exciting for me about Indianapolis right now is that there are a lot of young people, and I say young, 30s, 40s, 50s, who are younger than I am, but who have decided that they are going to stay in Indianapolis and who are going to, stake their claim and create things. So Kelly is one of them. If those of you who don't know Kelly, look up Be Nimble or just Google Kelli Jones and see the great things that she's doing. There's a wonderful profile of her on Visit Indy, Judith's former employer. But many of you may have seen gone to the recent art festival that Gang did, that Molly Jeffers and her partner Alan Bacon put together, where they're really celebrating the incredible talent of artists who are in Indianapolis. And Teresa is here, incredible music scene. Teresa lived in New York for many years. She came back home to Indianapolis. So I think there is a renaissance that is going on right now, both culturally and with business, because Indianapolis still remains, it is the crossroads of America, which attracted Madam Walker to Indianapolis. It is easier and less expensive to do business in Indianapolis. Real estate is less expensive. And so there are many reasons to invest in Indianapolis. And so I think a lot of people who 30s, 40s, and 50s who are saying, I don't have to go to New York. I don't have to go to Chicago. I can be a part of making Indianapolis even better.
Yes. And it's exciting. And I think too, the generation gap, that's one thing that I've been trying to do, is connect with a lot of these young people and get them in places and spaces that maybe they haven't been or wouldn't normally be in. I talked with Indie Hub today. I was on a panel with the 1828 group, and they were saying, well, how, they know how to get involved in the city and they're in Indie Hub. They said, how can we really be a part of the change and the system? And I said, go to the city's website, indy.gov, look at the various boards and commissions. If you want to be on the Metropolitan Development Board, to question when people are zoning and changing business and areas, get on the Citizens Police Complaint Office board. See if you can get into the Commission for African American Males. There was a young man who I've worked with creatively, TJ, and he was saying there isn't a voice for queer African American males, and no one ever wants to talk about it. Well, then let's see if we can get you appointed to the Commission for African American Males in Indianapolis, so there is a voice. And so it's exciting to see. I can tell you, my generation didn't do all this. They just didn't. I don't know what we were doing. I guess having fun. I don't know. But it's just people are really wanting to make a difference, and I'll second that. A lot of young people are staying here. I can see that my friend Megan Murphy is on the call. She decided to stay in Indianapolis, come back to Indianapolis from college, and start a charter school, Circle City Prep. So on the east side, where there's a need for organizations and charter schools like hers. And so she's, it's exciting to see that folks are really putting some time and effort, because that cannot be easy, starting a school from scratch, and very admirable. But Indianapolis has really changed, and it's good to see, and good to see that spirit of Indiana Avenue and Madam.
So I see that Sue and the Proper Lamb are putting great links into the chat, and Paul Mullins, Sue has put the link to Paul Mullins's Invisible Indianapolis blog. If you aren't already familiar with Paul, who's a professor at IUPUI, he has done some of the most incredible research about the neighborhood around Indiana Avenue, as well as the neighborhood that I grew up in along Grandview Drive, where he really does a deep dive into some of the history and some of the real estate issues. Judith, when I was in Indianapolis this last visit, you know, that 18 months of pandemic, I was only there. I think the first trip I made back was in June. And then I was there last week for a few days. And I'd been hearing about the Bottle Works, and I'd been hearing about 16 Tech. And Emily Kruger, who's the COO at 16 Tech, gave me a tour. They've named one of the streets that's right now kind of a flooded lake will eventually be Breedlove Lane, named after Madam Walker. And she took me to Machine Works, which is managed by Paul Williams, a recent graduate of Heron. And he showed me all of the machines and the maker spaces and all of the designs that are happening, the businesses the incubator that will be there to create businesses, the outreach to the community. I was just blown away by the possibilities and the collaboration that is being created between 16 Tech and the community. And then I went to Bottle Works because, you know, I had to see Bottle Works because everybody's talking about it. And there was so much energy there. And I just really, for me, the big dream before I leave this earth would be to see that part of Indiana Avenue where the Walker Building is, to see that kind of energy, that kind of walkability and welcoming community.
That's you and me both. And ironically, the fact that I'm with the city of Indianapolis right now and in a position to work with the Department of Metropolitan Development, to work with the team that you've pulled together, to work with the neighborhood and the community to really see and to be able to have these discussions on how we can make that happen. How can we connect Indiana Avenue to 16 Tech and all along that way, and even with IUPUI, and make it unique and make it something that the city wants, so that when people walk there, they know they're at Indiana Avenue. They see that history, they feel that history, they have that atmosphere, but they also know there's somewhere where maybe you're walking down the street. I mean, I always imagine things like this. We're walking down the street and all of a sudden, oh, there's a beautiful statue or bust of Madam Walker. But yet you walk down and you hear music playing out of the Walker over the marquee, and it's music of nothing but Indiana artists. Everybody from Cole Porter to Noble Sissel to Michael Jackson to John Mellencamp, and you're riding your bike and you hear that, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And then you walk by and you see there's an incubator for African-American businesses or Latino businesses, or a Tease Me out at the corner just under John Spalding's saxophone. And people are sitting out there having tea and having coffee and talking to each other. And maybe Teresa's out there singing. And then you go down another area and people are just in a park playing chess or walking down the cultural trail, and it's endless. And then all of a sudden you're at 16 Tech, or maybe there's so many other things in between, a bookstore, just innovation, seeing people working together and collaborating. That's the dream, and that has to happen. Right. And people living in the area, richness.
Well, you know, and you and I have these dreams, but I'm going to do a little reality check and then go to the vision. But part of the reason that that there's a parking lot across the street from the Walker Building that the IUPUI campus developed is on the destruction of what was historically a Black neighborhood. And now people can drive to downtown across 65. They can look at that parking lot on both sides of the street. And I heard a planner say, oh, it's a blank slate. Well, you know, now it's a blank slate because it was destroyed. And so we just have to keep that fact in mind. But we are in a moment where there is such an opportunity to create something that does do some reparative work. And so when we look at this, it has to be a collaboration between Indiana University, IUPUI, which has that big blank parking lot, the Madam Walker Legacy Center, the Urban League, the Episcopal Church and St. Philip's, the City of Indianapolis, the City Council, CICF, the Lilly Endowment, because in what this would do, rather than just to put up yet another apartment building, what it would do would be to create something that Indianapolis can be proud of, something that where Indianapolis is a leader in doing this reparative work, in creating a template for other communities that have had similar issues in the destruction of a neighborhood, but now can create something that really welcomes everybody. And that is a destination for people from all over the United States. You know, one of the things I love about coming back home, when I was growing up, there were very few restaurants. And now Indianapolis has a fabulous restaurant scene, a fabulous cuisine scene. It has great culture, has great museums, has a great canal walk, a great convention city. So it would just, for me, be amazing for Indiana Avenue to become a destination.
And it has to be, you're right, a collaboration. And I think that's the next step. That's where we're going, and really organizing and putting all the players that you mentioned in the same room to discuss what those next steps are and what the opportunities are, because the time is now. And if we don't do it now, it's never going to happen, and it's got to happen. And that's what we're looking at. And it's good we're having these kind of conversations, because we have to let the community and the city and those that really care know that we're trying to move forward and make a difference, that we all need to work together. And as I've learned even more so in the city of Indianapolis, there's so many different people with so many different opinions, and they're experts. All of them are experts on that particular thing. Believe me, I got yelled at by a minister on Tuesday. I still have the scars to show it. And what he said just was not true, but he believed in his heart what he believed. And you've got to be able to work with people, and we've got to be able to kind of start thinking differently and start having a little bit more empathy and trying to understand where other people are coming from, and see how we can work together and maybe give up something you may have wanted for the greater cause. And that's where we are right now.
So Liz, I think we're at Q&A.
We are at Q&A. I know I've got a list of questions, but I want to start with this. What can we do to be an ally? How can we add our voice to this discussion? What can we do? Judith, what can we do? Like all of us on this call today.
Stay aware and listen to what's going on. Stay connected. Continue to ask questions and have events like this, forums like this, but also do some homework, do some research, go to the Historical Society, and go through the archives, and because you can do it digitally. Through Traces, the magazine there, I have learned more about Indianapolis. And Paul Mullins, he actually gave an incredible presentation about parks and racism in the city of Indianapolis to the Parks Department, about the history of all that went on. He had an article about the Dust Bowl that I learned about. That was amazing. So there are a lot of things just to see that we have a rich history here, and how can we just be connected to each other and know that we need to stay on top of things. And we'll, as we start having these forums and these discussions, Liz, we'll keep your organization posted, so that if people want to join in, or if we have public things, definitely want to make sure.
Yeah, we are so happy to share any information that you have. We really are. So yeah, just let us know. So can you talk about just a little about intentional innovation? So I think when we talked a couple of days ago, we were talking about, the intentional neglect, and that happened, in cities all over the United States. Can we talk about intentional innovation, like putting the time and the effort into intentionally making this neighborhood what it was?
I think it's exactly having these discussions and getting the key players together, so that we don't have what happened in 18 or in 2019, that something comes up that no one wanted to see. Can you imagine, with all due respect to those that were involved in that project, had that happened and gone through, we would have lost it forever. That was not, it was intentional in a different way, but not in a good way. And so we just have to make sure that we take those steps and keep communicating and get the right people in the room and discuss the possibilities, and have experts in, like some of the people that Alelia has been working with the Mellon Foundation and other places, that can give you some some meat to deal with, to be able to communicate and say, this is why we have to do this. If we don't do this, this is not going to be a reality ever.
Right, right.
So Liz,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
speaking on November 16th at Indiana Landmarks, the Rethink Coalition, which is trying to do some mitigation on some of the expansion of the highway. Charlie Richardson invited me to speak, and while Justin Garrett Moore can't be there in person, he and I will do a little recorded conversation. But Justin Garrett Moore, if those of you who don't know him, he's JG Moore on Instagram and Twitter, but he grew up in Indianapolis, and he is now a major executive at the Mellon Foundation and looking at preservation. But he is a young genius on planning and preservation. So proud of him. But folks can sign up for that conversation at the Rethink Coalition on November 16th, and I'll actually put the link in the chat. But I think that these conversations, to really realize that in the same way, as you say, this was intentional to kind of destroy the neighborhood to make way for the university is starting to do some intentional things about repairing things, about providing scholarships for the descendants of people whose grandparents and great-grandparents' homes were destroyed. But CICF has been doing a lot of its work on making people more aware. The Lilly Endowment is involved in things that make people more aware. But if you are on a board, if you are part of city planning, anything like that, just ask that question. Drive down Northwestern or MLK instead of taking 65. Get off early and just go through that neighborhood. Familiarize yourself with the things that went on that created these neighborhoods, so that you didn't have to look at these neighborhoods that were predominantly Black, and because the freeway just gets you down. When I visit Indianapolis now, because I had to sell the family home I'll just say I had to sell the family home because nobody was there anymore. But I stay with friends who live on 86th Street at 465. Well, I can get on 465, 65, and I'm downtown in less than 20 minutes. Well, that's a great thing. But you forget about what used to be there. And so we need to just sort of pay homage to that community and kind of lift it up.
Yes, and Ransom Place is a beautiful neighborhood with a lot of history. I know one of the things that I'm still wanting to do, and even talk to someone with the School of Informatics the other day about some projects, but of creating that African-American historical digital trail. Because a lot of the buildings aren't still there, but a lot of those homes at Ransom Place are, thanks to, I believe, Jean Spears, who did a lot of work in preservation in that entire area. Otherwise, the whole place would be wiped out, I think, if she hadn't done the work that she did. But Ransom Place, there's signs out there saying who lived in those homes. And as I always say, imagine being able to stand in front of those homes and do a QR code and pull up multiple people that lived there, photos of what the homes looked like, photos of the people that live there potentially, because we do have that at IUPUI. I think took a picture of the homes and have the historical information, as well as other places that have been torn down. The fact there's a Black hospital, Lincoln Hospital, in the early 1900s, where Black people were able to go, where a lot of folks don't realize they couldn't have gone, Black people couldn't go to regular hospitals, white hospitals. They were left on the steps to die half the time. So we actually had a Black hospital over on Senate, and there's a historical marker there. But to be able to tie all that together from a digital standpoint would be also a part of that revitalization and intentional focus on letting people know what it's all about.
And the beauty now is that this is something that is available to everybody to come and to enjoy. It's just sort of honoring the history that was there, but it is to make sure that everybody is welcome and everybody can come and sort of appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions that we want to ask? I know there were some, very specific questions about housing, and I believe there was one. Deborah had a question about Alelia, about your great-grandmother's home in New York and what they're doing with that now. And it's a little bit off of Indiana Avenue, but
well, it's all well. Here's how we thread that needle.
Okay.
There are two National Historic Landmarks honoring Madam Walker. One of them is the Madam Walker Legacy Center, and the other is Madam Walker's home in New York, Villa Lawaro, which is in Irvington, New York. And it is now owned by a foundation that was created by Richelieu Dennis, the founding CEO of Sundial Brands, the company now owned by Unilever, which manufactures Madam Walker hair care products. But that house Richelieu created a foundation called New Voices Fund to support women of color entrepreneurs. And it has $100 million venture capital fund. And the house is in actually great shape for a 100-year-old house, but there's some repairs and restoration that's going on. And it will eventually be kind of a think tank gathering place for some of the cohorts of the women who go through the New Voices Fund curriculum. So yeah, so there's, people should, that the Madam Walker Trail, we can, there's a marker in Delta, Louisiana, and in Indianapolis and in New York.
Is he bringing back the Madam Walker hair products, I'm hoping?
Right.
Because they were so good.
The company created, the new company, MCJW, created a line of hair care products that were sold in Sephora starting in 2016. Now, many of you may think Sephora is not exactly where you go to buy hair care products for Black women or for anybody. They're just not known for that. So there's a new line, and I can't tell you all the details, but a new line that will be introduced in a major retailer in early 2022. And the formulas are great. They're not the original formulas because, like anything else, it's 100+ years of research and development. So when people say, can I still buy those original Madam Walker products? And I'm like, well, she drove a Model T, but don't you want a Tesla? And so this is the Tesla of formulas.
Yeah, and what he created was wonderful. It really was. So I'm looking forward to that. That's good to hear.
Okay. So quickly, Alelia, you have a book coming out. What else? What's next? What are you doing next?
So I'm trying to finish the first major biography of Madam Walker's daughter, Alelia Walker, and her Harlem Renaissance life. And I'm just like almost finished. It's almost done. And I'm just I'm being involved in a bunch of things, but I am really finding myself drawn back to a lot of the things that are going on in Indianapolis. I have 4 trips to Indianapolis between now and the end of the year. So I just, it's time for me to do some stuff in my hometown.
Very good. Judith, you're hardly busy at all. So
yeah, I'm 7 days a week. I rarely say no to anything. At some point, I'm going to have to start saying no. But hey, that's what I'm here for. I knew what I was getting into. I've got, limited time, and I got to get a lot of things done and try to connect with a lot of people. So, and try to hit as many jazz concerts and go watch Teresa sing as much as I can. So, and Teresa, you were wonderful. I just love that, especially collaborating with Rob and the other musicians. It was great. And it was an original piece, right?
Yes. Thank you.
We have one more coming up. So don't jump off yet, because this one I have been humming for a week and a half. Alelia and Judith, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to have met you. Someday in person, we're hoping, maybe in the spring, but we do appreciate it more than you know. So Judith, we'll see you, I'm sure, around.
For sure.
And we're going to go ahead and we have another performance by Teresa. And I will preface this by saying that we know that there is a lag in the video, and we do apologize for that. We are at the mercy of Zoom. I think the sound is okay. We will be sending the direct link to everybody, and that will be clear. So I'll make sure that everybody gets the direct links for both of these performances. But we're going to go ahead and show that right now. So
can I just say, Teresa, your grandmother would be so incredibly proud. You have an angelic voice. You are gorgeous. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's I'm so proud of the woman she was, and I hope that I can kind of keep working to better my city in the same ways that she tried to. So thank you.
Yeah. And we did put a link in the side to your concert. You're coming up at in Broad Ripple. So, and we'll send out these links as well, because I know it's hard to take notes when you're listening. And we did put a lot of links in the chat feature tonight. So we'll make sure we get that out to everybody too. So without further ado, Teresa Reynolds.
I have known for many years that I wanted to name my future daughter after my grandmother Violet, who worked for Madam C.J. Walker at the Walker Building on Indiana Avenue. And this song is dedicated to my daughter, and this is Violet.